5:17 hours, the 26th of October, 1944. The sea below the B-24 Liberator is the color of charcoal, a void separating the last known world from the target ahead. At 18,000 feet, the air is -40 degrees, a cold that seeps through leather and steel, felt not as temperature but as a persistent aching malice. Inside the shuddering fuselage of the bomber Hard Luck, Staff Sergeant James A. Jock Henley, a 31-year-old tail gunner from Ohio, watches the eastern horizon bleed from black into a dull, hostile gray. His world is a plexiglass bubble, 6 feet behind the last ton of the aircraft. He is utterly alone. The formation of Liberators, heavy with incendiary clusters, is on a maximum range strike into the heart of the Japanese-occupied Chinese coastline. Intelligence suggests minimal fighter resistance. Intelligence is wrong. The first warning is not a radio call, but a shift in the light. Speckles on the horizon, tiny and precise, catching the first sun. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. They multiply from one cluster, then another, not specks. Aircraft climbing with a predatory grace American bombers could never achieve. Henley's breath fogs the glass. He counts 20, 30, 40. The Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service has sent an entire fighter group to meet them. They are Kawanishi NFK Shiden fighters, George's new, faster, and more heavily armed than the famed Zero. They hold every possible advantage: altitude, speed, numbers, and the rising sun at their backs. By every known rule of aerial combat, this formation is already dead. The mathematical certainty of attrition is absolute. In the Faith Air Force, a gunner's life expectancy was measured in missions, not years. The previous month, Henley's own squadron had lost 4 bombers and Fey men in a single engagement. The pattern was a brutal, simple science. Japanese pilots would identify a bomber's gun positions by the bright glowing trails of its tracer rounds. They would then follow those luminous paths directly back to the man firing them. Every gunner in the theater loaded his .50 caliber belts. The same way, 4 inert ball rounds, then 1 brilliant tracer. It was doctrine, it was suicide. As the first Shiden rolls into its attack dive, its wings sparkling with cannon fire, Jock Henley does the unthinkable. He breaks the only rule he has ever been taught. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. He reaches for his ammunition belts and begins to strip every single tracer round from the chain. He is creating a weapon of invisible death. And in doing so, he is signing a personal contract with a battle that has not yet begun. The lead fighter is now 800 yards out, filling his sights. Henley's gloved thumb finds the trigger. The formation holds its breath. The .50 caliber machine guns in the tail turret do not roar. They hammer a brutal, metallic bam, 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 bam that vibrates through Henley's teeth and bones. But something is wrong. There is no visible proof of it, no bright lines of orange light streaked toward the diving Shiden. No luminous arcs to correct his aim. In the turret, there is only the deafening percussion and the faint smell of cordite. For the Japanese pilot closing at over 400 miles per h. The world has gone silently, inexplicably lethal. The standard American tracer was a phosphorus filled round that burned for over 2 miles. In theory, it was a tool. In the skies over the Pacific, it had become a neon sign pointing directly to its source. Gunners called tracers homicide bullets for the speed with which they attracted return fire. The enemy's tactics were refined, efficient, and built upon this single, predictable American flaw. Henley's guns fire only ball and armor, piercing rounds, dark ammunition, invisible from muzzle to target. The lead Shiden pilot, expecting the customary glowing stream to orient his deflection shot, sees nothing. His instinctual calculation of the bomber's defensive fire is based on a visual cue that does not exist. For a critical half-second, he hesitates, his aim thrown into confusion. It is all the time the darkness gives. Henley's unseen stream of lead finds its mark. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The first evidence of his fire is not a tracer's glow, but the sudden, violent disintegration of the fighter's engine cowling. A plume of oil, then flame, erupts from the nose. The Shiden flinches from its dive as if struck by a ghost, rolls once, and vanishes below Henley's feet. No confirmation is possible. No cheer comes over the interphone. In the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot, seeing no tracers from their own tail, assume Henley is dead, his guns silent. A cold dread settles over the aircraft. They are now defenseless from the rear. In the turret, Henley is fighting a solitary war of geometry and instinct. He is aiming blind, leading targets based on pure estimation. His only feedback the fleeting image of a fighter shuddering or a wing panel shearing away. It is an act of terrifying faith. The second and third fighters press their attacks with disciplined fury. Cannon shells rip through the Liberator's left wing, shredding metal. The bomber lurches. Still, no tracers answer them from the tail. The Japanese flight leader, assessing the situation, makes a logical, fatal deduction. The tail gunner has been killed in the first pass. The rear quadrant of the bomber is undefended. He signals a fresh pair of Shiden to finish the cripple. They peel off from the main swarm, confident, forming for the classic kill showed a slow, close formation attack from directly behind, aiming for the engines. They are not attacking a vacant position. They are flying directly into the calculated, invisible killing zone of a man who has already rewritten the rules. Henley watches them line up in the center of his optical sight. He takes a slow, frozen breath and lets the darkness speak for him. The two Shiden fighters approach in a loose line. Astern, a textbook maneuver for destroying a dead gun position. They close the distance with a chilling lack of evasive action. 600 yards, 400. The optimal killing range for their 20mm cannons. Inside the turret, the world narrows to the crosshairs and the oncoming silhouette. Henley's heart is a frantic drum against his ribs, but his hands are steady. He has no tracers to walk onto the target. His first burst must be perfect. He is not shooting at a plane. He is solving a physics problem of speed, angle, and drop in a screaming, vibrating laboratory of aluminum and fear. He depresses the trigger. Again, the hammer blow of the guns. Again, the ghostly silence of their product. The lead Shiden holds its course for a 2-second eternity. Then a constellation of black dots impact strikes flowers across its cockpit and engine. The fighter's sleek profile distorts, its canopy disintegrating. It pitches forward violently, a wing tearing away, and cartwheels into the void without ever firing a shot. The wingman, mere hundreds of yards behind, is now flying through the disintegrating debris of his leader. He is confronted with an impossibility. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. His comrade has been destroyed by fire he never saw. Primal confusion overrides training. He brakes hard to the right, presenting the broadside of his aircraft in a panic turn. It is a fatal error. Henley tracks the blur of motion, swinging his turret with a grunt of effort, leading the target by a width he prays is correct. Another long burst. No sparkling trail, only the result. The fighter's right-wing root explodes in a shower of metal and fuel. A sudden, violent flame consumes the fuselage. It spirals down, a comet with a black smoke trail. 2 kills in under 10 seconds confirmed. And still, not a soul aboard Hard Luck knows their tail gunner is alive. In the cockpit, the pilot barks into the interphone. Tail report. God damn it, Henley, report. Henley's voice, when it comes, is a dry, crackling static over the din. 2 down, rear sector clear for now. The relief is instant, followed by a wave of disbelief. The co-pilot stares back through the plexiglass toward the tail, seeing nothing but empty sky where fighters should be. How? We saw no return fire. Henley does not explain, there is no time. The main enemy formation, having witnessed 2 of their own vanish mysteriously from the bomber's rear, is reassessing. They pull back, circling like wolves confused by a wounded prey that refuses to bleed. The respite is measured in heartbeats, but a new and more profound danger is emerging. Henley's heresy has created a tactical blind spot for his own formation. The lead bomber's command pilot, seeing no defensive tracers from Hard Luck, has drawn the same conclusion the Japanese did. Her tail gun is silent. In a tight formation, a single defenseless bomber is a cancer. It invites concentrated attack that can break the entire defensive box apart. The order crackles over the squadron frequency. It is logical. It is cold. It is a death sentence. Hard Luck, you're a magnet. You are ordered to drop out of formation. Try to make for the coast. They are being cut loose, alone, damaged. Over 200 miles of hostile territory, with a swarm of 40 enemy fighters now turning their full attention to the isolated prey. Jock Henley's invisible weapon has just made his bomber the primary target for every pilot in the sky. The Hard Luck peels away from the protective herd like a wounded animal. The sensation is visceral, a sudden, sickening drop in engine noise as the other liberators pull ahead. their collective defensive firepower receding. The bomber is now a solitary silhouette against an immense hostile sky. Below, only the endless, unforgiving sea. The Japanese flight leader sees the opportunity immediately. A disciplined force divides. 15 fighters maintain pressure on the main formation. The remaining 25, an overwhelming armada, bank in a graceful, terrifying turn toward the lone B-24. In the tail turret, Henley watches them come. 25 against 1. The mathematics of slaughter. His mind races through the logistics of his gamble. His ammunition belts, custom loaded in the pre-dawn darkness, hold 500 rounds per GUN. He has already expended nearly a third. The .50 cals will overheat, become useless long before the ammunition is spent. He is not just fighting pilots, he is fighting the metallurgy of his own guns. The first coordinated attack is not a wild charge. It is a surgical pincer. 3 Shiden approach high from the left, 3 more low from the right. Their attacks time to split his attention. They have identified the tail as a threat, but its nature remains a mystery. They are probing. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Henley chooses the high group. He lets them come. His turret traversing silently. At 300 yards, he fires a short, precise burst at the leader. No tracers. The fighter peels away abruptly. A section of its tailplane missing. The probing attack dissolves into evasive maneuvers. They have felt the unseen sting, but they have not seen its source. The low group, however, seizes its moment. Cannon shells stitch a line of eruptions across the Liberator's right waist, shredding the fuselage. The aircraft shudders. A scream echoes over the interphony. The waist gunner is hit. The internal world of the bomber descends into chaos. The shriek of torn metal, the howl of wind through new holes, the co-pilot yelling damage reports. Henley is isolated from it all. A fortress of one. He cannot help the wounded man. His duty is to keep the predators from the kill. He swings his turret down, tracking the low fighters as they break away. He fires, but the angle is poor. He scores hits on one, seeing pieces fly, but no kill. The Japanese commander, analyzing the radio chatter from his pilots, begins to understand. The tail gun is active but invisible. The solution is not to avoid it, but to overwhelm it. To flood the zone, he issues new orders. The next attack will not be a probe, it will be a tsunami. 8 fighters form into a single, stacked column. They will attack in rapid, relentless succession from the same quarter, the dead rear. The theory is merciless. No gunner, no matter how skilled, can track, lead, and fire on 8 individual targets, hitting him one after the other. The first few may fall, but the mathematical certainty is that one will get through. Then 2, then the kill. Henley sees the column forming. He understands the tactic immediately. He has enough ammunition, perhaps, for 4, 5 if he is lucky. His guns will be white. Hot barrels after 3. The first fighter in the column rolls into its dive. The execution has begun. Henley has 30 seconds of ammunition, 8 targets, and a wall of fire about to descend upon him. He must now perform the impossible not once, but 8 times in a row. The first fighter of the column is a blur of olive green and rising sun insignia. Henley fires a 3-second burst. The Shiden's engine coughs a plume of smoke, and it veers off. Wounded but not destroyed. No time for a finishing shot. The second is already in his sights, overlapping the first. History insists this should have ended here. A single gunner in a frozen turret against a timed, mechanized onslaught. It is a battle of rate, of fire versus human reaction, and the equation is rigged. Henley does the only thing he can. He stops trying to kill them all. He shifts his aim. Instead of targeting cockpits or engine skill shots that require precision, he hoses a torrent of dark ammunition into the space. The fighters must fly through. He creates a lethal curtain, a wall of leads centered on the approach path of the column. He is not shooting at airplanes. He is poisoning a piece of the sky. The second fighter flies directly into it. Its wing root disintegrates. It flips onto its back and spins away. The third, seeing the fate of the one ahead, pulls up sharply, exposing its vulnerable belly. Nothing happens. A seizing, metallic groan, a jam, both guns. The Shiden's cannon shells rip past his turret, missing by feet. The fighter screams by, so close. The prop wash rocks the massive bomber. Henley is now utterly defenseless. The 6th, 7th, and 8th fighters are lining up for their uncontested pass. His hands move with a frantic, trained muscle memory. He slaps the charging handles. yanking back on the frozen bolts. The jam is catastrophic, mangled, smoldering cartridge welded into the breech. He fumbles for the clearing tool, a simple steel rod, his fingers clumsy with cold and adrenaline. Over the interphone, a desperate shout from the pilot. Tail! They're lining up. Henley rams the rod into the breech. He can see the sixth fighter, steady in its aim, growing larger in his glass. He pounds, the metal shrieks, the cartridge gives, ejecting in a shower of sparks. He slams the bolts home. The guns are hot, damaged but armed. The sixth fighter is yards out and firing. Henley, half blinded by smoke and stress, fires back. His burst is wild, but it passes close enough. The fighter, seeing muzzle flash but no tracers from the supposedly dead gun, loses its nerve. It jerks away, its own cannon fire going wide. The column is broken. The tactic has failed, but the cost is catastrophic. As the remaining fighters scatter, the damage report from the cockpit is a litany of ruin. Number 3. Engine is gone. Hydraulic pressure 0. We've lost the waist guns. Henley, what's your status? His guns are nearly destroyed. His ammunition is below half. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The bomber is crippled, losing altitude, and alone. He coast of Japanese, occupied China. The coastline is not a refuge. It is a sprawling, open prison. Below the crippled hard luck, the terrain unfolds a patchwork of flooded rice paddies, jagged limestone karsts, and dense emerald green jungle. Every square mile is held by an enemy with orders to shoot down airmen on sight. Bailing out here is not rescue. It is the beginning of a slower, more uncertain death. The bomber struggles on, descending through 10,000 feet. Its death rattle is a symphony of failing systems. The ragged scream of the 3 remaining engines, the banshee wail of wind through shredded metal, the incessant clang of loose cables beating against the fuselage. They are a wounded beast, leaving a trail of smoke and hydraulic fluid across the sky. The Japanese fighters have not abandoned the hunt. They have reformed higher up, shadows against the sun. They are patient now. The bomber cannot outrun them, it cannot climb. It is a matter of fuel and bloodletting. They begin a grim, methodical process. Individual fighters make high-speed slashing attacks from different angles, expending minimal ammunition, each pass opening new wounds. They are draining the life from the aircraft, conserving their own strength for the final certain kill. In the tail, Henley's world has become a torture chamber of heat and vibration. The steel of his gun mounts is too hot to touch. His breath comes in ragged gasps. His oxygen mask is frosting over. Every time he traverses the turret, the mechanisms grind in protest. He is down to his last few belts of dark ammunition. He fires only when a fighter commits to a close, lethal run. Each burst is an economy of motion, a calculation of dwindling resources. He damages another. It trails smoke and drops away. A new, more chilling problem emerges. Silence from the left waist gun position, then, from the right waist gunner, a broken transmission. They got Sarge. Has gone. The left gun is out. The bomber's defensive perimeter has collapsed. The entire port side is now an open, undefended flank. The Japanese flight leader sees it immediately. He signals a pair of fighters to circle wide and set up a coordinated strike from the left. A blind spot Henley cannot possibly cover from the tail. The hard luck is now half-blind and bleeding out. The pilot's voice, when it comes, is stripped of all hope, reduced to flat, tactical necessity. Jock, they're setting up on our port side. We can't cover it. You understand? Henley understands. He is being asked to perform a final geometric impossibility, to defend an approach he cannot see against an attack he cannot anticipate. To do so, he must abandon his own sector, leaving the rear unprotected. It is a choice between 2 certain deaths. He makes a third. Give me 30 seconds of hard left turn. He rasps into the interphone. Steady rate. Don't waver. It is a demand, not a request. The pilot, trusting nothing but the grim results this gunner has produced, obeys. He banks the massive, wounded bomber into a shallow, grinding turn. Henley does not try to see the port side. He uses the turn itself as his weapon. As the bomber pivots, his turret, fixed to the airframe, rotates with it. He is no longer just a gunner in a turret. He is using the entire 30-ton aircraft as a gun platform. Swinging its Thailand, his gun sends a slow, deliberate arc across the sky where he predicts the port side attack will come. He is aiming at empty air, leading a phantom, betting the lives of every man aboard on his mental map of the enemy's tactics. He depresses the triggers, pouring his last reserves of dark ammunition into a calculated patch of nothingness. He is firing a preemptive ambush into the future. The two Scheiden pilots, curving in for their kill on the port beam, fly directly into the invisible converging wall of steel Henley has just laid before them. The first of the port side fighters does not so much explode as unravel, a main spar in its wing struck by multiple caliber rounds at the convergence point of Henley's predicted fire, shears with a violence that ripples through the entire airframe. The aircraft simply comes apart, shedding its wings in a cloud of debris. The second fighter, flying slightly behind and above, has a microsecond to react. It pulls up violently, but not before a line of dark rounds stitches across its fuselage and cockpit. It continues its climb for 100 feet, then noses over, inert, and begins a tumbling, lifeless descent into the jungle below. On the interphone, there is a stunned silence, broken by the co-pilot's disbelieving whisper. "My God, 2 more. How?" The remaining Japanese fighters, now numbering fewer than 15, pull back to a wary distance. The mathematical certainty has been shattered. They have lost nearly a dozen of their own to this one, smoke, trailing, dying bomber. A palpable shift occurs in the attack pattern. The aggression is tempered by a new, chilling respectant tactical recalculation. The flight leader, recognizing the futility of more close range gun passes against this invisible, lethal tail, issues a new order. They will use their altitude and speed advantage. They will make high-deflection, long-range cannon passes, sniping from fey yards, exploiting the bomber's inability to maneuver. It is a slower, less certain method, but it minimizes their risk. They can pick the hard luck apart from relative safety. For Henley, this is the worst possible development. Long-range, high-speed passes are the hardest to hit. His dark ammunition advantaged the enemy's confusion at point blank ranges nullified. He is now a stationary gunner trying to hit darting distant targets with weapons on the verge of total failure. A cannon shell from the next pass detonates just below the tail turret. The concussion is a physical blow. A spiderweb of cracks explodes across Henley's plexiglass canopy. Shrapnel peppers the metal around him. A sliver of hot steel slices across his cheek. He feels the warm seep of blood, but the cold air instantly freezes it. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Worse, the hydraulic lines for his turret traverse are severed. A fine, aerosolized spray of red fluid mists the interior. The turret grinds to a halt, jammed in position. He is frozen, staring fixedly at the 10 o'clock position relative to the bomber. Vast sections of the defensive sky are now permanently closed to him. He is a fortress, but the enemy has just walled off 3 of its 4 walls. They can now attack with impunity from his blind spots. The pilot's voice is grim with finality. Jock turret hit. Hydraulics gone. Im stuck. A pause, heavy with the unspoken. Then, understood, do what you can. The bomber drones on, a dying thing dragging itself toward a hazy, distant mountain range theoretical, almost mythical neutral zone still 100 miles inland. The Japanese fighters, like sharks that have tasted their own blood, begin to circle, methodically positioning themselves for attacks from the bomber's starboard rear and beneath the sectors Henley can no longer reach. Henley has one gun with perhaps 100 rounds left that hasn't overheated. He has a field of fire the width of a hallway, and he has a crew depending on a defense that no longer exists. He looks at his immobilized guns. He looks at the cracked, bloody glass. He looks at the fighters beginning their organized terminal dance outside his frozen arc of fire. He releases his safety harness. Releasing the harness in a crippled bomber at 8,000 feet is an act of desperation that borders on insanity. The turret is a death trap if the aircraft breaks apart, but it has already become a coffin. Henley unlocks the turret's manual rotation, clamp a heavy, greased steel pin meant for maintenance on the ground. With a grunt of exertion, he begins to heave his body against the frozen mass of the turret, muscle against metal, man against machine. The turret moves not with hydraulic smoothness, but in agonizing, jerking increments a foot. Then another. He is not aiming the guns. He is physically dragging the entire 3-ton apparatus, inch by screaming inch, using his own body as a lever. Sweat mixes with the blood on his face, freezing instantly. His back muscles shriek in protest. He is no longer a gunner. He is a mechanic in hell trying to rebuild his weapon under fire. Through his fractured plexiglass, he sees a Sheehan lining up for a perfect, uncontorted beam attack. He heaves again, the turret groaning, gaining another precious degree of traverse. It is not enough. He will never get the guns on target in time. He does the only thing left. He fires a wild spray, and prey burst across the bomber's own tail fin directly into the Sheehan's predicted flight path. He is not aiming at the fighter. He is throwing a final, desperate handful of gravel at a charging bear. The gambit works through sheer, blind luck. One of the wild rounds strikes the fighter's propeller hub. The imbalance is catastrophic. The engine tears itself from its mounts in a shuddering convulsion. The Sheehan yaws violently and spirals down, out of control. It is not skill. It is chaos. And chaos is the only currency he has left. But the burst has emptied his last operable gun. A final, hollow clack echoes in the turret. He is now holding two expensive, overheated paperweights. The remaining Japanese fighters, seeing the lack of return fire from the previously lethal tail, recognize the silence for what it is, the end. The flight leader signals the coup de grace. They cease their cautious circling. They begin to form up for a final massed strafing run that will saw the bomber in half. The hunt is over. Now comes the butchering. In the cockpit, the pilot knows it, the crew knows it. The interphone is a grave, silent space. They are out of altitude, out of speed, out of guns, and out of time. The mountain range is a blue smear on the horizon, impossibly distant. Henley slumps against the hot metal of his useless guns, his breath ragged in the frozen, oil-tinged air. He stares at the enemy forming up. He has nothing left to throw at them. No ammunition, no traversing turret. Only his will, which counts for nothing against 20mm cannons. Then his eye catches a glint on the turret floor. A single, forgotten belt of ammunition kicked into a corner during the chaos. Perhaps 50 rounds. It is standard. Issue belt. It contains tracers. A final, bitter irony. The very tool he had rejected, the device that marked men for death, is now the only weapon he has left. He grabs the belt with numb, bleeding fingers. He struggles to feed it into the breech of his left gun. The mechanism is scorching hot, warped. It may not fire. It may cook off and kill him. The Japanese formation is turning in, lining up for their final run. Henley has one last, terrible decision to make. To die in silence or to use the tracer, the homing beacon for enemy guns in a final suicidal act of misdirection. To light a signal fire that will either blind them or burn him alive. He feeds the first glowing round into the chamber. The belt snags. Henley's frozen fingers claw at the mangled link, desperation overriding pain. The lead fighter in the killing formation is already beginning its dive. There is no time for finesse. He yanks with all his remaining strength. The belt jerks free, feeding into the gun with a metallic snick he feels more than hears. He has no hydraulic power. His turret is manually cranked to a crude, fixed angle, pointing not at the attackers, but at an empty patch of sky to the bomber's high right rear direction of minimal threat. It makes no tactical sense. It is the act of a dead man firing a final, pointless flare. Henley squeezes the trigger. The gun barks once, a jarring, singular shot in the exhausted silence. And then, a miracle of failure, it jams again, immediately. But it has fired one round. One single phosphorus-tipped tracer. It arcs away from the bomber, a brilliant, lonely comet burning a vivid orange path into the vastness. It does not race toward the enemy. It curves gracefully, uselessly, up and away from the formation, a beacon pointing at nothing but empty air. To the Japanese flight leader, watching from his cockpit, this single errant tracer is a message. It is not a weapon. It is a signal of abject, final failure. It tells him the bomber's last gunner is panicked, disoriented, firing wildly at phantoms. It confirms what he already believed. The bomber is defenseless. The careful, wary approach is no longer necessary. He feeds the first glowing round into the chamber. The belt snags. Henley's frozen fingers claw at the mangled link, desperation overriding pain. The lead fighter in the killing formation is already beginning its dive. There is no time for finesse. He yanks with all his remaining strength. The belt jerks free, feeding into the gun with a metallic snick he feels more than hears. He has no hydraulic power. His turret is manually cranked to a crude, fixed angle, pointing not at the attackers, but at an empty patch of sky to the bomber's high right rear, a direction of minimal threat. It makes no tactical sense. It is the act of a dead man firing a final pointless flare. Henley squeezes the trigger. The gun barks once, a jarring, singular shot in the exhausted silence. And then, a miracle of failure, it jams again, immediately. But it has fired one round. They do not see Henley. He has abandoned the left gun with its jammed, glowing round. He has turned back to his right gun during the precious seconds bought by the tracer's misdirection. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. He has used a screwdriver from his toolkit to perform a battlefield autopsy on the breach. He has cleared the worst of the fouling. He has managed to feed into it the last of his precious, dark ball ammunition, a final belt of 20 rounds. He cannot traverse to meet the fighters. They must come to him. And they are. Obligingly, perfectly. They are sliding into the narrow, frozen killing alley still covered by his immobilized turret. He rests his head against the cracked sight. His body a mass of pain and exhaustion. The lead fighter fills the glass. He can see the rivets on its wings. He waits. The pilot is likely selecting which engine to target first. At 150 yards point, blank range, Henley fires his last 20 rounds. There is no dramatic, sustained burst. It is a short, economical BRP of sound, lasting less than 2 seconds. The dark ammunition is invisible. The only evidence is its effect. The left-hand Scheiden's engine detonates as the rounds walk up its cowling and into the fuel line. It vanishes in a ball of fire and black smoke. The right-hand fighter, flying in tight formation, has no time to react. Pieces of its wingman cartwheel into its own path. It pulls up sharply, but not before Henley's final. Stray rounds puncture its cockpit. The aircraft continues its climb for a moment, then slowly, gracefully, rolls onto its back and descends in a lazy, fatal spiral toward the jungle. 20 rounds, 2 kills. The last of the dark ammunition. The sky behind the hard luck is suddenly, shockingly empty. The remaining Japanese fighters, having watched the 2 designated executioners vanish in seconds, break off entirely. The flight leader makes a cold, professional assessment. The cost has exceeded the value. The bomber is deep over land, dying. Let the terrain or the infantry finish it. He signals the recall. The swarm turns away, climbing back toward the sun, leaving a solitary smoking aircraft trailing its death across the Chinese sky. In the turret, Henley slumps forward, held up only by his harness. He is out of ammunition, out of tricks, out of strength. The pilot's voice crackles, thick with emotion. Jock, they're leaving. Son of a bitch, they're leaving. But the reprieve is an illusion. The war is not over. The ground is rising to meet them. The bomber, mortally wounded, is descending into a landscape of stone teeth and green hell. They are not safe. They have simply traded one certain death for another. Silence is a new kind of terror. The deafening cacophony of guns, engines, and cannon fire is gone, replaced by the ominous whistling groan of a mortally wounded aircraft in its death glide. The hard luck is descending at 5 feet per minute, a slow, irreversible sinking. The jagged peaks of the Nanling mountain range, which from a distance promised vague sanctuary, now loom as sharp, impenetrable walls. The pilot fights the controls, a battle of sheer physical strength against failing hydraulics and asymmetric drag. The co-pilot recites a desperate litany of damage. Number 3 is seized. Number 4 is overheating. Flaps are gone. Rudder response at 40%. The bomber is not being flown, it is being negotiated with, begged for one more mile. Henley unclamps himself from the broiling, ruined turret. The transition from his frozen private war to the communal devastation of the fuselage is a descent into another layer of hell. The interior is a charnel house of cold wind, dangling wires, and the coppery smell of blood. The left waist gunner, Sergeant McVeigh, is dead, his body shrouded in a flak jacket. The right waist gunner, Corporal Ellis, cradles a shattered arm, his face pale with shock. They are still over 80 miles from the theoretical safety of Chinese guerrilla-held territory. The mathematics of their situation are brutally simple. They will crash long before they reach it. Henley stumbles forward, his legs numb. To the cockpit, the view is a panoramic indictment. Nothing but endless, crumpled green ridges for as far as the eye can see, no fields, no roads, no signs of anything but wilderness and enemy occupation. The pilot doesn't look away from the windshield. Mountains are too high. We can't climb over. We have to find a valley, try to put her down in a riverbed. It is not a plan, it is a hope, and hope is a frail currency at 4,000 feet. Then, Ellis, the wounded waist gunner, rasps from his position, pointing a trembling finger downward. Smoke, at 2 o'clock, low, thin column. All eyes strain. There it is. A faint, grayish wisp rising from a narrow valley floor, almost invisible against the dark green civilization or a trap. It could be a Chinese village. It could be a Japanese patrol cooking breakfast. The pilot makes the only choice left. He banks the shuddering bomber toward the smoke, sacrificing precious altitude for direction. The mountains rise on either side like cathedral walls. They are flying into a stone corridor. At 1,500 feet, the source becomes clear. A cluster of steeply pitched, thatched roofs nestled along a terraced hillside. A remote village, and in a small, heartbreakingly narrow clearing by a river, a patch of flat ground. It is not a field. It is a postage stamp strewn with boulders. No, the co-pilot breathes. It is too short, we'll never stop. We don't land, the pilot says, his voice eerily calm. We ditch. We tear the belly out on those rocks and pray it is enough to kill our speed. He barks orders. Crash positions, brace jock. Get back and help Ellis now. Henley stumbles back, helping the wounded gunner to a reinforced bulkhead, lashing them both in with webbing. He looks out the torn fuselage one last time. The ground is rushing up, a blur of green and gray. The pilot's voice comes over the interphone. Steady, final. Impact in 10. God be with you. The bomber, with the grace of a falling anvil, drops its last few feet and meets the earth. The sound is not a crash, it is the world tearing apart. The bomber's belly strikes the first of the riverbed boulders with a shrieking metallic roar. The airframe convulses, buckling upwards. The sensation is not of stopping, but of the earth itself rising in violent protest. Men are thrown against their restraints with bone, jarring force. Every rivet, every seam screams in agony. The hard luck skids, grinds, and disintegrates along its length. The left wing shears off against a granite outcrop, spinning away in a cloud of fuel and debris. The nose crumples like paper, the cockpit glass exploding inward. The fuselage, acting as a massive plow, carves a furrow of shattered stone and torn earth for 100 yards before the tortured remains slam to a lurching, twisted halt. Silence, not true silence, the hiss of steam. The ping of contracting metal, the drip of fluids, the moan of the wind through the new, terrible shapes. Henley's world swims back into focus through a haze of pain and concussion. He is hanging sideways in his straps. Ellis beside him is unconscious but breathing. The fuselage is ripped open to the sky. The smell of raw earth, high-octane fuel, and blood is overwhelming. Survival instinct, drilled and hardened, takes over. He fumbles with the harness, drops to the tilted deck, and checks Ellis alive. He turns toward the cockpit. The sight chills the last warmth from his body. The nose section is compacted to half its length. He climbs over twisted spars, his mind refusing to process the geometry of the wreck. He finds the co-pilot first, dead on impact. The pilot is trapped, his legs pinned under the collapsed instrument panel, but conscious. His eyes find Henley's, clear and urgent. Get out, the pilot whispers, blood on his lips. Fire, get them out. Henley smells it then, cutting through the other scents. The sweet, volatile stink of aviation fuel pooling on hot metal. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. A single spark will turn the wreck into a funeral pyre. He drags Ellis out first, hauling the dead weight of the wounded man through the jagged tear in the fuselage and down onto the rocky soil. He goes back for the pilot. He pulls, heaves, but the metal will not give. The pilot grips his wrist, the strength fading. That's an order, Sergeant. Go. A flicker of orange light dances deep within the wreckage, reflecting in the pilot's eyes. The fuel has found its spark. Henley makes the most brutal retreat of his life, scrambling back as the flame whooshes to life, racing along the fuel trail. He staggers away, pulling Ellis farther back just as the fire reaches the cockpit and the remaining ammunition begins to cook, often a savage popping crescendo. He stands with Ellis, watching the bomber burn. They are 2 men out of a crew of 10. They are in the middle of nowhere. The flames are a beacon visible for miles, and they are not alone from the tree line. At the edge of the clearing, figures emerge, not in uniform. Peasant clothing, dark and muted. They hold tools, not rifle shoes, and long knives. They move cautiously, their faces unreadable. They are not Japanese soldiers, but in this war, that does not make them friends. Henley, weaponless, raises his empty hands. Ellis groans at his feet. The villagers form a silent, wide semicircle around the two surviving airmen and the burning tomb of their aircraft. They say nothing. They simply watch. The fire crackles. A secondary explosion rocks the wreck, making the villagers flinch but not flee. An older man with a wispy gray beard and eyes that have seen decades of conflict steps forward. He looks from the wreck to the men, his gaze lingering on the distinctive patches of the 14th Air Force. He speaks a single, guttural word in a dialect Henley cannot understand. Then he points to the woods and then to the sky and makes a slow, deliberate cutting motion across his throat. The message is clear enough. The Japanese are here. They will have seen the smoke. They will come. The old man points again to the woods, then to Henley and Ellis. It is not an invitation. It is a directive. The choice is no choice at all. Stay and be captured by the enemy who scrambled 40 fighters to kill them. Or follow these strangers into a wilderness they cannot navigate, with no guarantee of sanctuary. Henley looks at the burning cockpit, then down at his wounded comrade. He nods to the old man. The villagers move quickly. Two younger men step forward, slinging Ellis' arms over their shoulders. They melt into the shadows of the tree line, leaving no trace. Henley takes one last look at the funeral pyre of the hard luck, then turns his back on the wreckage of the sky and follows the silent villagers into the waiting, impenetrable green. The air war is over for him. The ground war has just begun. The jungle swallows them. The world contracts from the vast lethal theater of the sky to a claustrophobic labyrinth of damp roots, hanging vines, and perpetual twilight. The villagers move with a silent preternatural speed, their feet finding invisible paths on the sodden ground. Henley, his body a catalogue of bruises, burns, and exhaustion, stumbles behind every crashing step, a thunderclap in the silence. They do not stop for hours. The only sounds are the squelch of mud, the drone of insects, and Ellis' muffled groans of pain. The old man, whose name Henley will never learn, periodically halts, raising a hand. The entire column freezes, becoming part of the forest. Only then does Henley hear the distant foreign sound. They are fleeing. The faint, barking cough of a Japanese patrol truck on a distant road. The enemy is sweeping the area. They arrive at dusk. The village is not a village at all, but a scattering of bamboo huts so well camouflaged they seem to grow from the mountain itself. It is a hide, not a home. The people here are not merely peasants. They are the eyes and ears of the Chinese resistance. They have seen bombers fall before. They have buried airmen. They have also killed Japanese soldiers. That night, in a smoky hut, a woman with hands like leather cleans and binds Ellis' arm with herbal poultices. An old field radio, powered by a hand-cranked generator, sputters to life in a corner. In broken English and through a chain of whispered translations, the story is passed along. The coordinates of the crash, the number of dead. The names' days blur into weeks. Henley's war shifts from the kinetic to the psychological, the endless, gnawing uncertainty. The fear that every rustle in the bush is a patrol. The guilt that lives in the empty spaces where his crewmates should be. He learns that his final solo stand over the coast has already become a distorted legend among Allied intelligentsia. A wild report of a bomber that fought off an entire fighter group against impossible odds. The facts are buried with the hard luck. A month later, under a moonless sky, guides lead Henley and a recovering Ellis on a brutal, week-long trek over the mountains. They are passed from one clandestine network to another, a secret cargo moving through an occupied land. They are the lucky ones. On the 3rd of December 1944, 38 days after being shot from the sky, James Jock Henley stumbles across a muddy river into the hands of a forward patrol of the Chinese Communist New Fourth Army. He is emaciated, sick with dysentery, and dressed in rags. He is officially the sole survivor of his crew. The military bureaucracy, upon his return, will classify his actions. He will be credited with 7 confirmed aerial kills during that final Mishona number that historians will later argue is conservative, perhaps by half. The dark ammunition tactic will be studied, quietly adopted by some, but never become standard doctrine. The system prefers order to genius, especially genius born of desperation. But history is not made in briefing rooms. It is made in frozen turrets at 18,000 feet, in the last-second decisions that defy every rule written by surviving generals. Jock Henley did not win a battle. He did not change the course of the war. He accomplished something more primal, more human, and in its own way, more profound. He violated a law of nature. He looked at a set of conditions designed to produce a specific, fatal result, and he changed one variable. He removed the light. In doing so, he transformed a guaranteed death into a fragile, bloody, impossible threat of survival. He forced a rethink in the moment of execution. His story is not one of glory. It is a story of a man who understood in the crucible of combat that the greatest weapon is not the one you are given, but the one you invent when all the given ones have failed. It is about the power of a single heretical idea in a universe of accepted failure. The war would grind on. More men would die, more rules would be written, but in a forgotten corner of the sky over the South China Sea, for one brief, brutal engagement, the invisible had proven more terrifying than the inevitable, and that, in the end, was enough. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more.